hello to the pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippe, and welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. And this has been a very, very interesting week of NFL football, to say the least. The Vikings was an insane ending. We had some other insane endings throughout the NFL, and the standings got, shaken up a little bit. Some teams switched out in division races, and a lot of exciting stuff down the stretch. But first, we'll get through the ending of this week, and we're just going to jump into it quickly because it's been a crazy week. So going into the first matchup, Thursday night football, Steelers at the Browns, and it was a crazy weather game. The Browns end up winning this one 24-19. So this is one that I got wrong. I was pretty confident that the Steelers were going to win this game, but the thing that I didn't take into account is Jameis Winston. I mean, he completely revitalized and revived this team. If Winston had started the season over Deshaun Watson, I think this team could definitely be, hovering around 500, maybe even above 500, with the level of defense that they've still been able to show this year, and with better quarterback play, this team looked all of a sudden a lot more dangerous in this last game than met the eye the last few weeks. For the Steelers, it was a cold weather game, and you always say like, oh well, it was a run heavy game. It was a kind of game where either team could win, and the snow really leveled the playing field. But that's really no excuse, especially for a team like the Steelers, because this is the kind of game you'd think that the Steelers would be able to play into, and that it would play to their strengths as a defensive heavy team, and they just weren't able to get that job done, especially in the late moments of the game. Russell Wilson had a tough game, but obviously both teams weren't throwing the ball a crazy amount to a lot of success. But getting outdueled by Jameis Winston on Thursday Night Football, not something that Russell Wilson wants to do in these late stages of his career. So it's a game that the Steelers are going to have to learn from, bounce back from, and this defense, I'm sure, will bounce back and be better in the next few weeks. But they drop one, and all of a sudden they're cutting it close here, in the AFC North, depending on how this Chargers-Ravens game goes. The Vikings and Bears, make sure you watch my raw reaction for that one. I broke down everything that happened in that game already in that video that came out on Sunday, so make sure you check that video out. But that was one that I got correct this week, just a little closer than I expected it to be. Bucks, Giants. Bucks win this one 30-7 in the Meadowlands. I mean, this is just a situation where the Giants released Daniel Jones, and while I can't say for sure that they are 100% tanking for that number one overall pick, I don't think the Giants would be upset for that to be the case. No, I truly don't think that any team should ever be intentionally trying to tank, no matter how good of a player they're trying to go for. It's just not good for team chemistry, and that's how you create a situation where if that first round or first overall pick doesn't work out, you're rebuilding for years to come, because you decided to adopt a losing culture within your team. But if the Giants do, based on the decisions they make, get the number one overall pick, I don't think they'd be devastated about it, especially considering the cards they were dealt. I don't think anyone's expecting them to do well anyway. But the Buccaneers had a huge bounce back game, especially the Bucs defense, who have been giving up a few more points than they are used to these last few weeks. The Bucs, after losing three heartbreaking one possession games, getting a big bounce back W, and Baker Mayfield, consistently is doing well for this team. So Bucs still trying to fight it out and win this NFC North battle, which is, NFC South battle, which is still pretty close here between them and the Falcons. The fourth game of the week, Chiefs 30, Panthers 27, and this is one where the Chiefs really escaped with another one that was close, and it should have been a blowout for them. And it's another game where you look at the Chiefs and you're like, how good is this team? They're 10-1, so many games against teams that they should be beating handily, that they are losing in very close ways. And obviously, the Vikings game, I said a win is a win, and that still continues to be the case. It's just this Chiefs team is still considered a juggernaut in the league, and I don't know if that's necessarily something that should be considered about them, given the way that they've won some of these games that they've won. It was a game for the Panthers where young was really starting to find a little bit of himself. You know, he was trying to find his identity within this Panthers offense, and that involved a lot of scrambling, a lot of Bryce Young deciding to take matters into his own hands, running for 20 rushing yards in this game, and then also just starting to trust his playmakers, you know, because he doesn't have the same level of playmakers that other teams have, but he has his playmakers, and he has been doing a better job of finding them in these last couple of weeks, and that's why the Panthers were able to win a few games in a row, and why they cut it pretty close here against this Chiefs team. But um, the question is, what happened to the Chiefs defense in this game? I mean, the Chiefs defense was keeping them in games the first few weeks of the season, and keeping them in those matchups where the Chiefs offense was just completely stalling. And now in a situation where the Chiefs just needed some stops down the stretch, the Chiefs weren't able to get the job done on defense. It's definitely something that Spags is going to have to, you know, look at in Kansas City over these next few weeks as they try to get back to being that juggernaut team that we thought they were going to be when the season started, going for a three-peat. Fifth game, Cowboys 34, Commanders 26. This was one of the most insane games of the entire week. I mean, we've got a team in the Cowboys where they were dead to rights at this stage in the season. Dak Prescott hurt, multiple other guys that were either hurt or unhappy within the organization. It just felt like a dumpster fire situation where I didn't expect the Cowboys to win very many games the rest of the way. And then here they go against a playoff team getting the job done. I mean, I hate to say it. I hate to say this about Dak. Well, I don't hate to say it. It's a Cowboys quarterback, but I truly think the offense looked better in these last couple weeks with Cooper Rush than with Dak Prescott. I mean, last week was pretty similar in production, but this week, I mean, probably the best offensive week the Cowboys had all season, and that was before Dak Prescott got hurt even. So that was definitely something to see. And it's just a demoralizing loss for the Commanders where, you know, multiple times they had a chance. I mean, the Cowboys tried to get them back into this game after both teams kind of struggled in the first half offensively. And you expected the Commanders to just launch, and they kind of did. I mean, the thing with the Commanders is they need to play better first half football and play all four quarters well. Because if they played the entire game like they played the second half, I mean, all but bets would be off. But Jaden Daniels, I think it's just a little bit of his development is making sure that he stays on the eight ball. You know, just because you know that you have the capability to come back in those situations does never means that you should get down to that point, whether you psychologically realize you're doing that or not. It's something that this team has to figure out, and it's part of the inexperience of this team not being in this situation before that they're going to have to figure out. But you know, a demoralizing loss that the Commanders needed to have, or didn't need to have, but should have had, and now it's pretty much out of their grasp to still stay in the NFC East division race. The Eagles pretty much captured that at this point, unless they completely collapse and the Commanders win out at this point. I don't think that is happening. And 8-4 is way different than 7-5 right now for the Washington Commanders at this point in the season. All of a sudden now they're staring down that seventh seed in the NFC. Patriots, Dolphins. The Dolphins win 34-15 in a home rout over the New England Patriots. And I think this is the kind of game where Drake May and this Patriots offense kind of showed its inexperience. This is the kind of game that when you don't have that experience as a team together yet, when you got a rookie quarterback that's just starting to get his land legs, these are the games that are going to unravel very quickly if you don't have it early and the other team realizes it. They start to pour it on offense, and the other team just can't catch up, and just momentum takes a much bigger swing when you've got a team like this that is not used to these situations quite yet. And Drake May is a phenomenal young quarterback. He's probably going to be really good for this Patriots team. Hopefully not too good, because I'm cool with the Patriots not winning for a good 20 years now. But this is just a team that needs to be put through the ringer a little bit more in these certain situations, and that showed in this game. And the Dolphins all of a sudden are looking like their offense is starting to turn around again. Tua finally, putting together a few healthy games here. Hopefully, he can have a healthy rest of the season. I just hate to see him get hurt again. And the thing that's been so great for this Dolphins team is the big play potential, and they have that back. Waddle had a big game, and the run game played pretty well, and Tua was just finding his guys, and this is an offense that is extremely based off of momentum, and they took that momentum and absolutely rolled with it in this game over the Patriots, and all of a sudden, this is a Dolphins team that could be back to their old self. But I really want to see them play against the Packers on Thanksgiving night. I don't think the Packers are necessarily a juggernaut team that's going to put them totally to the test, but they're definitely a playoff team. And this Dolphins team, I want to see how they do against a team that's going to go toe to toe with them offensively and especially in the run game, and see who can take that momentum and roll with it in that kind of a game. The Titans and the Texans, I did it. This is the first time this season that I've picked the upset of the week correctly. I said that the Titans would upset the Texans. Every week I pick one upset, and this week I got it correct. I just had a feeling, and I actually got it almost 100% correct in my predictions video, because I said this is the type of game I would expect maybe the Texans to have a little bit of a snafu offensively and to give up more points than they wanted to give up on the other side of the ball, give up some big plays, and that's exactly what happened on the other side of the ball. These last couple weeks, especially against the Vikings, the Titans showed that ability to get those big plays and get those deep touchdowns, and they just needed a team to open the door a little bit for them and allow them to make that happen. And that's exactly what the Texans did against them. And Stroud had his moments, but for the most part, this Texans team just couldn't get the momentum on their side enough to pull away. And it's something the Texans have to work on, is pulling away in the fourth quarter. And they just kept letting this Titans team that, for the most part, the season looked completely lethargic on offense. They let them completely have a rejuvenance. They Their offense was revived. What am I trying to think of? Exuberance, reju, rejuvenated. I don't know. Anyway, the Titans were able to get the job done, and the Texans all of a sudden lose a big game. I still don't think they have much to worry about. The Colts do have a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way, but I don't know if it was necessarily the kind of situation where the Texans should be worried about the division. We'll have to see there, though. Going into the next slate of games here, the Lions and the Colts, the final noon game of the day. The Lions win this one 24-6 in a game that, a team's really good when you see the Lions win 24-6, and you think, man, that wasn't a great game for the Lions. Now, it was one of those games where sometimes when your defense is playing that well and when the other team gets so little going, psychologically you just take your foot off the gas a little bit. And I know the Lions would never admit that that's what happened. I know the Lions would never want that to happen, and they want to keep their foot on the gas the whole way. But that's kind of just what happened. The Colts had nothing all game, and Richardson is completely inconsistent. And in this game, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And it didn't help that the offensive line didn't help him too much. So it was just a bad game overall for Richardson, and he needs to find something that sticks. And I don't know what that is for him. I don't know what that is for this Colts offense. They try to ride with Jonathan Taylor, but they just can't rely on him as much as they have when you have a quarterback that has the physical capabilities that Richardson has. You got to take more shots that are going to connect throughout the course of the game, and if he's not hitting those, then he can't be a starting quarterback, and that's what sucks about this Richardson situation. But the Lions consistently win games even when they are off their game, really, and that's what shows that the Lions are borderline the best team in the league, in my opinion, second best team in the entire NFL. Raiders. Broncos win 29-19. Oh, by the way, I completely forgot when I started the video, I'd say which ones I got right and wrong. So, I was wrong about the Browns beating the Steelers. I got both the Vikings, Bears, and Bucks, Giants correct. I also got the Chiefs, Panthers correct before getting the Cowboys, Commanders wrong. And then I was right about the Dolphins winning, the Titans winning, and the Lions winning. And I was also right about the Broncos winning 29-19. I say it every single week. I hate Sean Payton. I hate that this team is actually looking pretty good. Bo Nix is just him. You saw him mouthing to Max Crosby, who is one of the scariest guys in the entire league, mouthing "I fear nothing" to him. Well, he was obviously yelling it, but we heard him say or read his lips saying "I fear nothing," and he really does fear nothing. He runs with the ball, but he's not a running quarterback necessarily. He scrambles well, and he is not afraid to take a hit. He reminds me kind of a little bit of a smaller Josh Allen in that way. He's really getting a feel for throwing the football as well in the NFL. His experience and the fact that he was one of the older prospects coming out of the draft is really showing as of late. And this offense is really firing on all cylinders. And taking care of the Raiders is not necessarily a difficult thing to do. But I definitely think that they had an impressive game. He's finding Cortland Sutton, who is his wide receiver one, but on top of that, he's really spreading the ball out well. You got Vele for 80, Mims for 44, and Franklin for 31. This team is spreading the ball out so well, getting everyone involved on the offensive side of the ball, as well as having a pretty good running attack that wasn't great in this last game, but is continuing to still play well in these last few weeks. So this Broncos team offensively doing so well so far this season, and that's why they are currently, fighting for a playoff spot here. At the 10th spot here, 49ers 10, Packers 38. I'm not going to say much about this game because the 49ers injuries killed them. This game wasn't actually as crazy of a blowout as the final score looks. It's just the 49ers had nothing left to give after realizing they had their third string quarterback in, they had their best pass rusher out against a team that's been so good running the ball. It unraveled late, and the 49ers couldn't do anything about it. I think they still will be back. I'll be still astounded if they miss the playoffs this year. Although the Commanders, being 7-5, are the seventh seed. This is a pretty strong NFC this season. We'll have to see what happens, but I do think they'll come back if Purdy does end up, healing up over these last couple weeks. But we're just going to have to see there. As for the Packers, Josh Jacobs was really looking like himself again. I mean, he put up an amazing performance, punched the ball in 3 different times, and it was just an impressive night, offensively overall for the Packers. You have to hand it to them despite all the injuries to the 49ers. It was a really impressive game for them overall. Finally, the Cardinals and well, not finally, there's two more, but Seahawks and Cardinals. The Seahawks win this one 16-6. The Seahawks defense is back. It's not necessarily the Legion of Boom levels, but they have been a really good defensive team these last few weeks. What they've been able to do, forcing second and longs and third and longs, and forcing throws out of quarterbacks, has been absolutely phenomenal. And this team is just firing on all cylinders defensively. And Geno Smith hasn't had to do much. He's just had to make the plays to get ahead and lead his team to victory after his defense does most of the work. And so that's been really impressive for them. As for the Cardinals offense, they continue to be very inconsistent. We've seen 20-plus point games from them, and we've seen games where they've scored less than 10. And it depends what team we'll see out of them when the Vikings play them. But if the Vikings play this team, I don't think any bets are on the table for them having a shot. But you could also see them explode and take care of the Vikings. You never know. That's the kind of team they are. And Kyler Murray's another guy. Like I said with Anthony Richardson, he needs to find a consistent rhythm with this team. And over the last 3 years, he just hasn't been able to quite do that. He got pretty close, I think it was 2020, when the Cardinals lost in the first round of the playoffs. But after that, it's really been tough for Kyler Murray to consistently find guys and put together a consistently good offense. Sunday Night Football, Eagles beat the Rams 37-20. Saquon Barkley is basically all I can say. There were plenty of missed opportunities on the Rams side of the ball offensively, but if you're going to let a running back run for over 250 yards and punch the ball in, I mean, you're going to give up a lot of points. And this Rams defense did play very poorly against the run. I mean, when you give up that many yards, that's a given. But on top of that, I mean, the NFL really screwed up by letting this happen. I mean, you put Saquon Barkley with one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in the entire league. I mean, what are you doing? How do you let that happen? I think a lot of people thought Saquon was washed up, and I will admit I didn't think he was totally washed up, but I didn't have as much faith in him as I clearly should have going into this season. Saquon is still, if not the best running back in the league, the second best, potentially behind Derrick Henry. And so it was just an incredibly impressive game for him and these Eagles, and they get the job done and hold on to that second seed. And finally, the I was gonna usually I do the thing where I record the video earlier in the day and then I pass it to future Connor who breaks down the end of the game. But since I'm so close to the end of it here, I'll just break it down, even though it's technically not over yet. The Baltimore Ravens are currently winning 30-16 over the Chargers. The Chargers still have 3 timeouts left and 3:30 left to go, but I am going to confidently say that the Ravens are going to find a way to win this game. Just a dominant, another dominant game for Derrick Henry, and some deep, receptions for this Ravens wide receiver core. A big touchdown for Andrews, but some deep passes. I think it was Flowers that caught one of them. So it was a combination of Lamar Jackson, being Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry running the ball, and that was the case for the Ravens. And on the Chargers side, they had opportunities to get the ball in the end zone, and they ended up settling for kicks, which is something you can't do against the best team in the league, which I continue to say that I think the Ravens are the best team in the league, despite the Chiefs being 10-1, despite the Ravens technically not even being in first in their division. I still think they're the best team in the league. They just got off to a really rocky start, and I do think that they will. Do I dare say that they will be leading the division by the end of the year? I think they will be. I think they'll beat the Steelers in their next meeting, and I think they're going to roll all the way to one of the top seeds in the playoffs. But anyway, that will do it for Week 12 of the NFL season. The next few weeks, there should be a lot of shakeup here. You've got the NFC West, the NFC South, both of those really good battles, and a lot of shakeup could still happen in the seeding in the playoffs as well. A lot of things could happen at the bottom of the AFC in the wild card race. A lot of teams will be playing each other in the next few weeks within that bottom few of the AFC race. So a lot of exciting stuff happening, but stay tuned the next couple weeks for my preview of the next week, including all the Thanksgiving games. And if you don't watch any videos before that, I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving and fantastic holiday week, and have a great holiday season in general. Please let me know in the comments what you thought about this week's games, including a lot of crazy ones, and I will see you on the flip side.